Well, good morning, church. Sometimes things can be worth way more than you thought that they were. There's a great story about a guy named Albrecht Dürer. Now, this guy he's old, okay? So, he died in 1528, so it was a long time ago, okay? But he was regarded as one of the most important thinkers and artists of the European Renaissance age, okay? So this guy is a dude, okay? People have studied this guy for ages. They know his works. And so for one of his unknown pieces of artwork to show up is extremely rare. But it happened at a garage sale not too long ago. It was one of them stories where the guy that was selling this piece of artwork had no idea what he had. This piece is called The Young Hare and is completed in 1502, and it's pictured here. It's widely regarded to be one of the artist's most celebrated works because it's indicative of his observational style. Now, this thing was purchased, like I said, at a garage sale for $30, okay? The guy that was selling it, he was gifted the artwork by his dad, who was an art dealer, but apparently had forgotten to tell his son how much this thing was worth. The guy that bought it, he had it appraised. It is worth somewhere between 10 and 15, what am I going to say? $1 million. Makes you kind of wonder what you got hanging up on your walls, doesn't it? Next time you're at a garage sale, just put $10 and then put an M on the back and see if it sells, right? One of my best friends, his name is Jeremy Bedwell. I told him one day, I was in a conversation with him, and it just came up that I had a load of change that I was going to take to the bank, and I was going to cash it in, and I was going to save the quarters for car wash, kind of thing. And he goes, hey, I collect coins. I'm a coin collector. Can I look through your change to see if you got anything? Sometimes people have stuff that they don't know what it's worth. And I said, yeah, sure, that's fine. And so he comes over, and I dump it all out on the counter for him, and he's going through, and sure enough, he says, oh, hey, this one's worth a few dollars, or this one's worth $10, and he starts doing this, and he gets a whole pile of change there, and I don't remember what it was worth at the end. I think he said like 80 or 100. I don't remember. It was a little bit of money, and I said, well, that's cool. What do I do with it? I don't know. He goes, well, do you mind if I buy it from you? I said, yeah, that's fine. He goes, oh, I don't have my wallet. Is that cool? Classic, right? Forgot my wallet, And so I said, yeah, that's fine. He's my best friend, right? So I said, yeah, that's fine. Just pay me later, right? He goes, man, my wife is going to be so mad. I said, why? He goes, I keep doing this. I keep buying money. And apparently she's tired of it, of me paying money for money, and everything. Well, apparently he's still super nervous about it because that was 7 years ago, and I still hadn't seen any of my money, so he just took it, right? Now, nobody wants to be a sucker, right? We all want to say that we got a good deal anytime we're bargaining. Nobody, when you buy a car, walks off and say, man, I got taken. Right? How many of you bought a car and tell people, man, I got a really good deal on that, right? I've been there, right? We like to say that, and chances are you did not get a good deal, but they made you think that, right? Well, it's one thing to be suckered into buying a car or have your best friend just straight up take your money. And you know what is funny? It occurs to me, I'm not even sure that he actually is a coin collector. He's that kind of a guy that would just say that and just take your money, But it's a whole different deal. It's a whole different deal if you get suckered into centering your whole life around something that was a sham. To value something that you thought was real, but it was fake. To put your whole existence and drive yourself into that one thing in your life, Jesus, And if it's a sham, Paul says in the New Testament, he says, if our hope in Jesus is only for this life, in other words, if he really just died on the cross and he did not rise from the grave, if he was not who he said he was, he said, we as Christians are to be pitied more than anyone else on earth. I mean, think about it. Think of the embarrassment of believing that this guy was God, but actually he was just a criminal on a cross. That he was just a liar or a lunatic. That he wasn't who he said that he was. Think about all that we've had to endure following Jesus. It is not easy following Jesus all the time. Think of all we've given, our time, our effort, our money. It's just gone for nothing. Think about all the people that we've told. And we've shared this good news that turned out to be no news. If it's all a sham, if it's all a fake, Jesus told a super short story that nails this exact thinking. We're starting a series, and we're going to go through some of those stories that Jesus told. He was a brilliant storyteller, and he would make up a story to make a powerful point. They're called parables. Some of his most famous ones are the parable of the Good Samaritan or the prodigal son. You probably know about those. Everybody loves stories, right? They're entertaining, they're memorable, and they have a point. And that's why Jesus often used parables when he would preach. So the story that we're going to look at today is a story that one of his disciples, Matthew, heard him preach. And it meant something to him, and so he included it in his gospel, the Gospel of Matthew. So if you have your Bibles or your phones, I want you to turn to Matthew chapter 13, okay? And we're going to read this story. Now, it's one verse. I mean, I told you it was short. It's one verse long, okay? If you're joining us online, we're so glad that you're joining us. But Matthew chapter 13, verse 44, it says this. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy went and sold all that he had, and he bought that field. Now, the meaning of this story, this parable, is simple. It's just this. Nothing is more valuable than the kingdom of heaven. That anything that you ever gave to enter and live for the kingdom, it is worth it. Now, we've all heard that it's said that God's grace is free. And that is true. You cannot pay for your salvation. Jesus paid for it. We cannot earn it. But we've also heard that it cost us a lot to follow Jesus, which is also true. It has cost people their time, their money, their effort. And so for some people, it costs them way more, even their lives. So when we're talking about if following Jesus is worth it, we want to look at that all the way around. Is it worth it? Right? So the first question is this. Is it worth it to accept it? To allow Jesus to become Lord over me? To submit to Him? To live for Him? To center my life around Him? Now, this is a short story, and so we know that there's more to it. The guy, he finds the treasure, and he immediately has a choice in that moment. Now, most people think, why couldn't he just take the treasure? He found it in the dirt. Why does he have to go buy the field? Why can't he just take the treasure and be done with it? Well, if he suddenly becomes a millionaire overnight, okay, people's going to have some questions. Okay, they're going to find out where that came from and where he got it from. So that's never going to work. He's got to go through the effort of reburying this treasure, and he's got to go buy it. And he doesn't have the money in the bank to go buy this field. He's got to go sell everything that he has to go be able to buy this field. That is not going to be easy. That's going to require some effort. What was he doing that day? Was he just walking somewhere and he kicked the treasure and he digs it up and he opens it up and sure enough there's a treasure there? Was he going somewhere? Did he have a task list that he was trying to get through? Did he have an appointment to go to? He's going to have to, he has a choice. Is he going to change everything that he's about to do for this treasure? See, he's got to know, is it worth it? To change what's important to him, to redirect his life to this treasure in a field, and to stop doing whatever he was going to be doing. He has a choice. He could just walk away. And the thing is, many people do. They see the treasure, they stumble upon the treasure, and they look and they see what is required of them. And they're unwilling. And they walk away from the treasure. And they leave the treasure in the field. This guy has a choice. He could walk away. He's going to have to change what's important. And not everybody's going to understand, are they? Think about what he has to tell his wife. He busts in the door and he says, honey, the most incredible thing just happened. I found treasure in a field. It's worth millions. We got to buy the field. We got to sell everything we have. We got to sell the house. We got to sell the car. That dress you're wearing, it's gone. We got to sell it. It's over. We're selling everything. Now, how many of us, if we have a spouse that come busting through the door and says, hey, I went to a garage sale and I found this artwork and it's amazing. It's cost a lot, but it's worth a whole lot more. We got to sell everything. We got to get rid of all of it. How many of us as spouses would be like, yo, can we pump the brakes on this just a second? Can we verify that? Can I see it? And what's he going to say? He's going to say, no, we can't. I reburied it. The dirt is fresh. Somebody else is going to find that. If we're going to get it, we got to go now, right? That's going to be a wild conversation, and not everybody's going to understand. But it's okay, because the treasure that awaits him in that field is worth more than being understood. And this guy goes all in. And that's what Jesus requires of us. There is no such thing as half Christianity with Jesus. When we accept Jesus, it means changing what's important to us. We descend off the throne of our own lives, and we put Jesus on the throne. Is it worth it to give up control of our lives to Jesus, that we will no longer live for us alone? Matthew, who wrote this down, he heard it, he wrote it down. It meant something to him because this was him. He was a perfect example of this. He was a tax collector. He was a Jew that sold out to work for the Romans, and not just work for the Romans, to cheat his own people, the Jews. He would sit there on the beach, that's where his location was, at his tax collector's table, and his job was to take taxes from the fishermen, but he would cheat them. That's what they did back then. That's why they were hated. They would cheat their own people to get rich. And so his treasure was there on that table. And Jesus walks up to Matthew, who has the world, and he says, follow me. And now, Matthew has to weigh the treasure that he has there on that table and weigh it against the treasure of Jesus. He would have to change what was important to him. And the price of admission for Matthew was going to be high. But if Jesus really was who he said that he was, then it's going to be worth it. Why? Why though? Matthew is not different than you and I in the fact that Matthew was going to walk around for 60, 80 years, maybe more if he's lucky. He's going to acquire some cool stuff. He's going to go on some vacations. He's going to make some memories. And then he is going to die. And then in 3 generations, he's going to be forgotten. We are not different. We will walk around this earth for 60, 80 years, more if you're lucky. You will acquire some cool stuff. You will go on some vacations and you will make some memories. And in 3 generations, nobody will say your name ever again. Is that worth more than what Jesus offers? For Matthew, he knew intrinsically that Jesus offered more than that. Now, if you ask Matthew now, if we were able to bring him from heaven to this stage, and we asked him, was it worth it? What is he going to say? 1,000,000% yes, it was worth it. If you held up the treasure that he had at that table versus the treasure of Jesus, right, it is not going to compare. Matthew would eventually leave much more than just his tax collector's table. He would leave everything, and he would travel down to the country of Ethiopia, and he would preach the gospel there until he was finally murdered for his faith. Was it worth it? It was. It was worth it because he was willing to die for Jesus because it was worth it. Not one person, no matter what they give up to accept Jesus, will ever regret so when it's all said and done. My day was January 31st, 1988. That was my day. It's the day that my eternal address changed. What is your day? Maybe for somebody in here today, it's today. It's this day. Is it worth it to accept it? Yes, it is. But what is it? Is it worth it to endure it? To endure the hardship of following Jesus. Following Jesus is not easy all the time. We know that. Think about the guy in the story that Jesus just simply said that this guy went and he sold everything that he had. Think about how much work that is to go and sell everything that you own. When was the last time that you sold a house and moved? It's not easy. Nobody likes doing that. And this guy was trying to get everything that he could out of his house. So he's going to have to go make some repairs, do some painting. I mean, he's got a lot of work ahead of him. And again, what would his family think? What would they think? What if they liked the house that they grew up in and made some memories in? What if they liked their neighborhood? What if they didn't want to leave, right? It's not going to be easy to uproot the whole family. And think about this. Where are they going to live after he sells a house and before he buys the field? There's that. What's he going to do? Just like that, following Jesus is not easy all the time because Jesus taught countercultural ideas of humility, of others first, of forgiveness, and loving those that are hard to love. Really following Jesus is not easy all the time. I heard an illustration about this that a long time ago that I never forgot. It goes like this, that there's a plane flying, but the plane is doomed to crash. And so there's a few parachutes on board, and so the flight attendant, he grabs one, and then he's got a couple more, and so he goes up to one guy in the aisle, and he says, hey, and he's whispering, he's like, hey, look, this plane, it's going down. 100% it's going down. Don't worry, I've got a parachute for you. Wear this. Keep it on. To the next guy across the aisle, he does not say that. He says something different. And he says, hey, look, I've heard, I don't know, there's some rumors going around that the plane might go down. I don't know. Sounds pretty wild to me. Things seem fine. But just in case, here's a parachute. I don't know if you'll need it, but might as well have it, right? As you can see, other people are doing it. And so what happens when the plane doesn't immediately go down? And you guys know how skinny those seats are anyway and how crammed you are. And that backpack, I mean, you're leaning forward and it's not comfortable, right? The longer you wear it, it begins to hang on your shoulders and get very uncomfortable and hard to wear. What happens to the first guy, the guy that knows that he's going to need it and is completely convinced that he's going to need it? What happens whenever he becomes uncomfortable? There is no way that he's ever going to take that thing off. It doesn't matter. It's better to be uncomfortable for a little while than to be dead forever. And so he's going to keep it on. But what about the second guy? If he's not really sure, if he's not really convinced, it's a whole lot easier to take it off whenever it becomes uncomfortable. If you are clear-minded and you know what's important, you would never pass on the gift of grace. Knowing that this world is not the end. It does not matter what hardship we go through. look, let's be honest. We look dumb to the world, being sacrificially generous, giving our money away like this. It is not easy to do that, but we know that it's worth it. We forgive others when they've harmed us. That's not easy, but it is worth it. We make room in our schedules, in our priorities, to join together at church and at youth group. It's not always easy, but it is worth it. We serve others in the church through things like kids ministry or the band or leading small groups. It's not always easy, but we know that it's worth it. We serve our spouse. We refrain from lust. We pray for our enemies. We do not judge others. We put Jesus first in our lives. It is not easy, but it is worth it. Endure it because it is worth it. The cost of following Jesus can be high, but that cost does not compare to the treasure in the field. It is worth it. And did you notice that Jesus said that whenever this guy went out to sell everything that he had, that he did that in joy? When you know that what you're trading in is worthless compared to what you're receiving, it makes it quite joyful. That's why in Acts 5:41, when they were getting whipped and scourged for their faith, it says there that they left the Sanhedrin rejoicing, like in joy, right? Because they had been counted worthy of suffering the disgrace for the name. Their scars were going to be a tattletale on them that they had been in trouble. But for them, they were a badge of honor, that they had endured pain for the name. In his joy, he went and he sold all that he had. If following Jesus is hard, then good. It makes us better. If following Jesus is tough, it doesn't matter. We will never quit because the treasure that lies waiting for us is worth it. The last question is this: is it worth it to share it? Now, this is not part of Jesus' story, that he found the treasure, he got it, and then he shared it with the whole town, right? Of course, if he had a family, he would have shared it. But for us, it's an obvious thing for us to share the treasure that we have in Jesus. But that's not always easy. A friend of mine, Jessica, is grieving the death of her friend Chelsea, who died a couple weeks ago. Chelsea was lost. She was lost. She did not know Jesus. She was part of a broken family that treated her badly. She also made some terrible decisions of her own that caused many consequences for her. But Jessica had a heart for Chelsea. Jessica was really the only one that cared for her. Her father and mother didn't even have a funeral for her. They didn't care enough for her to do that. Her husband was abusive to her. And when she was dying, he took her to the hospital and dropped her off and left. And she died alone. But Chelsea had one person who treated her with respect and with love. One person who honored her. Her mom and her dad didn't think that she was worth doing a funeral for. Her husband didn't think that she was worth staying by her side as she passed away. Nobody thought she was worth it except for Jessica. She was worth it to Jessica because Jessica knew that she was worth it to Jesus. Jesus created her, and Jesus does not make trash. Chelsea was a masterpiece of his creation, and Jessica treated her as such. But it came at a cost. Jessica tried to speak to her about Jesus, and every single time, Chelsea would reject her. Chelsea also had a drinking problem, and she would call Jessica at all hours of the night, and Jessica had to put some healthy boundaries to that relationship, but she was there for her whenever she absolutely needed her. Chelsea would also say very hurtful things to Jessica because she would look at Jessica's life, and Jessica had a great life and a great marriage and great kids, and she was jealous of that. So she would say very hurtful things to her. But Jessica would let that go. She would forgive her for the sake of the relationship. Now, we all know that at the end of a person's life, we are measured by the relationships that we have. As Chelsea lay on that hospital bed alone, I have no doubts that she was thinking about the one person that treated her with love and dignity and honor. And I wonder, we don't know, but I wonder if she also thought about the one thing that Jessica really wanted her to get into her life, Jesus. During her final moments in her life, it's almost undoubtedly clear that she would have thought through that. And did she, at those very moments, last moments of her life, accept Jesus into her life? Man, I hope she did. I hope she did. Because if she did, can you imagine that hug at the front gates when Chelsea runs up to Jessica and throws her arms around her and says, "Thank you for thinking that I was worth it." Do you think that it was worth it? Jesus says that it is. And someone is counting on you to think that it's worth it to share your faith with them. The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again. And then in his joy, he went and sold all that he had, and he bought that field. Nothing in this world is worth more than the kingdom of heaven. It is worth it to accept it. If you have not accepted Jesus' gift of grace or his forgiveness and chosen to dedicate your life to him, don't wait one more day. Why would you? Why would you? This is your day. You know what is not worth it? Your money, your pride, your work, your accomplishments, your address, your car. You will regret anything that you place ahead of Jesus in your life. You know what is worth it? Jesus. You know why? Because Jesus came down and he spread out his arms to say that you were worth this much to him. You were worth it to Jesus. Is Jesus worth it to you? It is worth it to endure it. Many of us live an inferior Christian life because we've added Jesus or morality into our lives. It has made our lives better, no doubt, but it has not shaped our lives, and thus we have eaten the fat and left the meat. Value the right things. I am concretely convinced that each one of us, a few seconds after we pass into the next life, will be instantly able to see the long view. Knowing what I know now, we'll say to ourselves, I would have lived so much differently. Now, just imagine, if you will, that you're at a hospital because your child is gravely ill. And you've been there for a long time. And you walk out of the room to go get a soda. And you walk up to the Coke machine and you put your dollar in, but it eats your dollar. So you're frustrated, and so you go and you try to find somebody to get that dollar back. But what you didn't know is during those moments, your child was having their final moments and they passed away. You would instantly regret how you spent that time. That dollar that you spent time chasing would be meaningless to you in that moment. In fact, you would despise that dollar. Don't let this be you. We are spending so much time on things that we value now, but the moment that we walk into eternity, we will see things differently. It is worth it to share it. This is not a hidden treasure from us. Jesus told us what is important. But what have we done with those words? In Jesus' last words on earth, he said, go and make disciples. He did not say converts. He said disciples. There's a huge difference. Which one are you? A disciple follows and stays close with their teacher. They seek to learn from them, to be like them. A convert simply agrees with them. They can adapt that way of thinking into their own life, but they don't sacrifice much. Someone needs you. There is someone out there who is waiting for you to think that it's worth it. A neighbor, a coworker, a friend. This is a fork in the road moment for all of us. Someone once said that the most important thing about you is what you think about Jesus. What is Jesus worth to you? You will not regret one sacrifice that you make for the kingdom of heaven. I'm going to pray. And if you would like to make a decision to follow Jesus, to rededicate your life, or if you just simply need to pray with somebody, I'm going to be back in the back during this next song. And I want you to come back there and pray with me. Or meet us in the Connect Corner after service. After I pray, we're going to sing a song. And if you believe that Jesus is worth it, tell him. Let him know. Let me pray. Jesus, you are worth it. Nothing is more valuable to us than you. You are the treasure. You are the very thing that we seek. You're the one thing that we desire because you rescued us. Your love has transformed what matters to us, filling us with joy even in sacrifice. We want to be disciples. You're worth every tear shed, every struggle endured, and every sacrifice made. Jesus, you are worth everything to us, and we give ourselves fully to you. In Jesus' name, amen.